Hi, I'm Marnie Engel, volunteer specialist with HSC. Welcome back to our national conference and a truly wonderful session, Hurry Up and Wait, with longtime HD community educator, Jimmy Pollard. Jimmy is trained as a special education teacher and formerly licensed as a nursing home administrator in the US. For 35 years, his career, pardon me. For 35 years, his career has been caring for people living with Huntington disease in their homes, care homes, hospitals, and other residential settings. His focus continues to be a better understanding and more effective accommodation for HD's cognitive challenges by family and professional carers. Today, Jimmy will be presenting Hurry Up and Wait, Understanding Cognitive Challenges. Thinking with HD is a primary challenge for those living with it. Accommodating these cognitive features is just as challenging to caregivers. Understanding how it feels to think with HD often helps to see problems in a new light. That is, from the point of view of the person with HD. We will be doing some interesting exercises that show how thinking with HD colors our interactions and challenges how we communicate with one another. For our exercises, you will need a paper and pencil, so please take a moment to grab them. Jimmy, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Marnie. Thank you, Honeyside Canada. Thank you all for logging in. Thanks to my Honeyside Canada colleagues over the years. I'm always grateful to be part of this. In this session, I want to see if we can see what it might feel like to think with Huntington's disease. Hang on one second. Off to a bad start here because I just dropped my timer. For those of you who know me, you know I can go on, so I have to set my timer here. Okay, here we go. So I want to see if we can see what it might be like to, what it might feel like to think with Huntington's disease, with the cognitive challenges that people walking their HD roads face. Now, when I say feel, I don't mean the psychological aspects of life or this Huntington's disease, like fear and loss and grief. All those psychological things, as real and challenging as they are, we're just going to move aside for a minute. And when I say what it might feel like to think with HD, I mean kind of a more visceral thing. And the way I tease that word visceral is, it's the old thing of, you know, rub your belly in a circle and tap your head at the same time. And I bet you nobody's doing that because we kind of know that it feels lousy to do it, meaning you got to maybe get your circle going and then maybe close your eyes and tap your head. It's not something you want to do. It just doesn't feel good to do it. Yes, you can do it, but it doesn't feel good to do. So we want to see what it might feel like in that sense to think with the challenges of Huntington's disease by doing a few simple activities to simulate these feelings in ourselves, those of us without HD, hopefully to better understand the cognitive challenges people face, that your loved ones face. But again, I use the word instead of cognitive deficits, challenges in thinking. So as Marnie said, you'll need a pen and paper for a couple of these things. And I hope you have them. If not, now is a good time to get them. The list of cognitive challenges that people face walking their HD roads is long. I'm just going to pick 4 of them for the sake of this brief talk. And they are, and don't note these because we're going to go over in each one, but slower thinking. There are fewer neurons fire and fewer neurons efficiently, so it slows down everything, processing all kinds of information. Maybe that's negligible from day to day or week to week, but it's happening over time. That's the first one. The second one is that difficulty doing two things at once or multitasking. The third one is that it's difficult planning, organizing, carrying things out in a sequence, particularly in your thoughts. And the last one is that a lot of people have difficulty waiting for anything. Not everybody, and not for the entire length of their HD road, but a lot of folks have difficulty waiting. So back to the first one, slower thinking or doing things slower, not slow, slower, progressively slower. Again, maybe not maybe indistinguishable, unnoticeable from day to day or week to week, but slower nonetheless. So the way we show that is this exercise. Now, if you have HD, I don't want you to do this. You guys get a free pass on this. But you're not off the hook if you're seated there, maybe at home with somebody on a couch, your loved one who doesn't have HD. Don't chuckle or tease them as they're trying to do some of these activities. So you're not off the hook, but I don't want you to do these activities. Okay, that said, and I hope you can see my screen here, close enough. So if you wrote your name, here's mine, just in cursive, over and over again, not fast, not slow, just like you would sign in a check. If we timed you all and figured out how many letters you wrote per minute, not the number of times you wrote your name, the number of letters you wrote, most people would write their name at about 180 to 160 letters per minute. That's fluent name writing letters per minute. So to show what it feels like to do something slower, we're going to go from that range of fluency down slower. As we say here in the greater Boston, Massachusetts area, we're going to go wicked far down to 6 letters a minute. 6 letters a minute is 1 letter every 10 seconds. So that's what we're going to do. So I want, don't start, but I want you to get your pen and paper. But let me begin by showing you my doing it. So in my case, the first letter of my name, the J, I would start now, and then 5 seconds in, I'd be halfway done, and 5 more, I'd be finishing that first letter, starting the second, 5 seconds in, halfway through, 5 more, finishing that one, starting the next. That's when I tell you, that's what I want you to do. I'm not the clearest instruction giver you'll ever meet, and it's difficult on virtual, but I hope you understand what I want you to do. If your name is really short, like if your name is Tim Fox, just keep writing your name over and over again. In other words, don't run out of letters, and keep doing it until I tell you to stop. So I hope you're all ready. I will, as I coach myself, I will coach you through this by saying, okay, please begin. You should be about halfway through. Finishing that one, starting the next, halfway through. You'll get the hang of it, okay? So if everybody's ready, we will please start that first letter. You should be about halfway through the first letter. Finishing that first letter, starting the next. Halfway through. Finishing that second letter. Halfway through. Finishing that, starting the next. Halfway through, finishing that, starting the next. Halfway through, finishing that, starting the next. Halfway through, finishing that, starting the next. Halfway through. Finishing that, starting. Halfway through. Finishing, 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 starting. Halfway through. Stop. Now, if you want to unmute yourself for a comment here, feel free, but I will assume or presume that you don't want to continue. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but most people don't want to continue. My question is, and if anybody wants to unmute themselves and answer this, I would be grateful. It obviously felt slow because we were going slow, but what words would you use to describe how that felt like viscerally? In other words, why don't you want to continue? Because it feels
difficult.
Difficult. Any other words? Thank you for that. Any other words? Anybody got?
Really?
What?
Impatient.
You felt impatient. Other words?
Frustrating.
Frustrating. Any others?
Tedious.
Tedious. Any others? Okay, thank you for those, all four of those. I'm grateful. I was actually waiting for one category of words, which is tiring or fatiguing, which would have been if we continued a little bit longer. That was 2 minutes and 10 seconds. First of all, I want to note that if you're at home during that 2 minutes and 10 seconds, you probably noticed other things going on in your environment. Maybe you heard the refrigerator, the air conditioning, cats or dogs or other people, TVs in the background, whatever. When you do things fluently and it starts to slow down, those other things kind of come and intervene, and you're more vulnerable to attend to them. Now, people will say, well, that's because it was quiet. And you're right. But your brain tunes out all those things when things are going at a regular pace. It just seems that when you slow down, those other things are easier to pay attention to. It's not just that it's quieter. I also want to point out that I am sure, looking at the screen here, how many people there are, it's certain that at some point in that 2 minutes and 10 seconds, probably not long into it, a little voice came into your head and started whispering stuff in your ear. Stuff like, okay, how much longer? We get it. Okay. That doesn't mean you're uncooperative or lazy or easily bored. It just means that you're human and you come wired that way. What I want to point out, though, is, and there's no science behind what I'm about to say, this is just an observation. And the observation is that little voice, when you come slower, it always says cynical stuff. It never says positive stuff. It never comes up and says, come on, Jimmy, you're only writing your name slow. Let's go, rah, rah. You got it, man. You can do this. It's always, Okay, how much longer, or something like that. Just want to point that out. And I will say the last thing on this topic is I will share my screen and show you this, and it is a time machine doing this exercise. So if you did this and you want to know what your name writing looked like back when you learned it, for me it was like in the 4th grade. There it is for you. It is a time machine. So I just want you to hold that idea of the words that people said, frustrating, I forget what, I've already forgotten the other word, tedious, and a couple of others. Hold those thoughts that describe that feeling. Because now we're going to do one more exercise. And I will do it. It's very difficult to translate this talk into virtual. For those of you who have seen this, maybe, you know it actually is poignant sometimes and fun when we do it in person as a group. So I'm going to do these things myself pretty much from this point, pretty much. Hold on to those pens and paper. So the next one is about how difficult it is to keep focus on one thing. In other words, how it gets difficult to do 2 things at once. And the way we make this point is with a common neuropsych test called the Stroop task. Stroop, S-T-R-O-O-P, named after somebody whose name was Stroop. So I will share my screen. It'll be familiar to some of you, I'm sure. Whoops. And here it is. I will say the colors of the word, not as fast as I can, but as fluently as I can. Red. So please look at your screen. Follow along as close as you can. Red, green, blue, yellow, pink, orange, blue, green, blue, white, green, yellow, orange, blue, white, brown, red, blue, yellow, green, pink, yellow, green, blue, red. Brilliant. God, I'm good at this. But wait, there's more, because we're now going to have me do 2 things at once. One is say the colors of the letters, but also push out an interfering cognitive dimension. This task, the Stroop task, is one that shows cognitive interference, is the neuropsych term, cognitive interference. So we're going to do this by, and you will recognize, many of you will recognize it, by changing the word and the color. So I'm going to do the same thing with the words differently, and I want to say the colors of the word, not what the word says. So here I go. Inhale. Green, yellow, white, pink, orange, blue, red, yellow, green, blue, red, blue, green, red, pink, blue, yellow, pink, green, orange, red, blue, orange, red, and green. Thank you. So the point of this is, number one, the frequency, or how fluently I did it. I blew through the thing as you would. It was really easy. But then we add this dimension that intentionally confuses it or cognitively interferes. It slows you down, and you are forced to focus on it that before you didn't have to on the first one. The main point of doing it is, though, to show those 2 things at the same time, but I'm focusing on the feeling, what it felt like to do that. Now, I'm not going to get a bottle of wine and get my BFFs together on this Sunday evening and say, hey, come on over, man, we'll do the Stroop together. Because it doesn't feel good that reading the second one. It's harder. And I am probably like, I bet most other people, where on the second one, that little voice pops into my head and starts coaching me, giving me strategies. like, Jimmy, just look at it and say the damn color. Just, it's color, color. Hey, just push that out, not the word color. Just say the damn color. Now, in HD, that coach, that self-awareness, that gets more challenging, gets harder to do. Now, we don't really know, and I don't know if neuropsych knows this either yet, but we can speculate a little. Maybe that self-coaching doesn't pop up as quickly, or maybe it gives me bad strategies, you know, like riding a bike, just go fast and it's easier. Go fast on this, that wouldn't help me. Maybe it would help somebody. But the point is, it doesn't feel good. And to point out that as you face HD challenges, that little coach, that self-awareness and then strategizing gets more difficult progressively. But again, hold that feeling of mine of what it was like having to concentrate on that second thing. It felt lousy. Third thing is we want to talk about how difficult it is for people to organize their thoughts, come up with a plan, carry it out, sequence it, and actually execute it. And the way we typically show this, and again, if we, and some of you have seen me, if you've seen me do this before, know this. If we were in a room somewhere together doing this, I would ask for volunteer. And I thank all the volunteers over the years. But in this case, just for brevity and because we're virtual, I will volunteer my central nervous system to do this task too. So this is about, again, organizing, sequencing, planning, how you're going to figure stuff out. In this case, things I can do in my head, because I'm seated in front of a computer. And what I am going to do is some mental arithmetic. This one too, if you've been in research, you'll recognize this task. More than Huntington's disease or research, this is an item in the mini mental status exam. So if you've been in, bumped your head in a fall or an accident and gone to an emergency room, they might have done a mini mental status exam and this item. So what I'm going to do is count backwards. It's called serial sevens, technically. And it's counting backwards from 100 by sevens. So here's here I go. 100, 93, 86, 79, 72, 65, 58, 51, 44, 37, 30, whatever, I'll stop that, okay? So, we all do this differently. There are many strategies that people use. And if we were doing it in person, in a group the size in a room, somebody would point out, yeah, well, I did it differently. How I did it was, so 100 to 93, that's easy. How to get from 93 to 86? In my head, out popped this little thing. It's like, oh, 93, 3 and 4 is 7. So I'll take the 3 from the 90s and go 4 deep into the 80s, 86. And then say, oh, 86. 7 and 1, I'm sorry, 6 and 1 is 7. So I'll take the 6 out and go 1 deep into the 60s. 69, 69, that's easy. 62, there's 62 again. 2 plus 5, I'll go 5 deep into 50, whatever. The point is that I am doing a novel task, going backwards, and to some degree counting by sevens. But in my head, I can go over and do a little figure of permutation of single-digit add facts or sums to 7, recognize 3, take that out, put it back in the next one, and do that, and then repeat it in sequence, in a novel direction, over and over. Again, if you have, when that pops into my head, what you don't see me doing, but what I'm thinking, that kind of self-awareness or self-strategizing, that's what gets more difficult as you walk your HD road. And again, we can only speculate at what the difficulty is. Might not pop into your head. You might have difficulty doing single-digit add facts pop in the head and not doing them fluently. Again, much of the stuff it just gets harder. I want to point out that, again, you're not going to get a bottle of wine and do cereal sevens on a Saturday night with your friends. Nobody says, hey, let's do cereal sevens. It's got that, I got to close my eyes and think. It takes a lot of focus for me to do it. And if you've seen me do this in person in a room somewhere, when we get the volunteer and we say, okay, count backwards from 100 by sevens, they usually go, oh no, God, you have to reassure them, let's go. Nobody wants to do it because it feels lousy, is the point. Now, it's just not me that feels this way. We all feel this way if we have to do these things. So I would ask you to get your pen and paper for the final thing I'm going to ask you to do. And it is this. So, got your pen and paper? Hang on. And here's what I would like you to do. I would like you, pen and paper in hand, to do this long division problem. I want you to divide 4,014 by 669. Stop. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. Don't do it. And if you did that, God bless you. I'm grateful. But I would now ask did you want to do that? Probably not. Why? Because we know doing long division feels it's lousy. You gotta do that stupid estimate, how many times it go in, the gazinta, right? How many times this might goes into this, and then you gotta multiply it out and then do a subtraction fact and get the difference and recycle, put it up there, and then do the whole thing. It feels mentally lousy. But my most important question is this, on this. If you absolutely had to do it, could you do it? And you could. You could. The issue is the most fluency, going back to the name writing fluency thing, probably the best you got it was when you were in grade school and had those manila sheets of paper and had 10 long division problems on it. That was probably the best you got at it, because then you were released into the world where, depending on your age, we had calculators, and now the calculators are on cell phones. So confronted with a long division thing, you're going to grab your phone and do that. It is not a functional skill. Our environment doesn't support long division by pencil and paper anymore. We grab our cell phones. So as your fluency is starting to go down. And when somebody asks you to do it, you don't want to do it. Is it because you're lazy? No, it's because you're human. And that feeling has come from your loss of fluency. Just remember that feeling of long division. Nobody wants to do long division. So, we avoid it. I want to use that word. We avoid doing things. Some people avoid certain things, right? Imagine if somebody said, hey, do it, use it or lose it, do it. Get out of here, man. We don't need this anymore. The last kind of cognitive thing that I want to address is this notion of that a lot of people, for a lot of their HD road, have difficulty waiting. So I'm simply going to do that by again sharing my screen and asking you all to fill in the blank. And I can't hear you, so I will be presumptive about this. But I would like you to fill in the blank on this sentence. And that is, when someone with HD wants something, they want it now. I can hear it through all the muted things now. I can probably also hear one voice saying, yesterday, when they want it yesterday. Or fill in this blank, it seems that people with HD just can't wait. Now, whoops, that is the case no matter where we do this. People will always, if they love someone with HD, they will fill in the blank the same way. So those are the four characteristics that I want to talk about briefly. And I just want to review them for a second. Think of the fatigue, you didn't use the word, you used tedious and frustrating, but I would use fatigue or general discomfort of writing slower. Think of that. I'd also say it's almost anything we do as people slower. And I use the word fatiguing because is anything fun, enjoyable, or comfortable when you're tired? Concentrating on something that you once did fluently just feels lousy when you have to make a conscious effort to focus on it. And then, like the long division, sometimes your skills have gone down here and it's like you avoid it. You just don't want to do it. At some point, as you lose that fluency, it just becomes a pain in the butt. And you just, I don't want to do it. Not a character thing, a human behavior thing, a neural thing. So remember that how difficult it was for me to stay focused on the second one. It really slowed me down. I had to have that little strategy popped into my head from that little voice that appears now and then. And it's difficult to switch and push that out. The difference between the written word and the colored word, as well as the difficulty one can have, as I did, trying to do the long division. Imagine any once easy thing took as much effort as it does to count backwards from 100 by sevens. Or if everyday problems you face felt like actually having to do those long division problems. We, without HD, we can see these things, these feelings in ourselves by doing these things. So take all those feelings and all the ways we, without HD, feel by doing some of these little cognitive exercises when we simulate them with these things. Take those feelings and layer them, one on top of the other. And I only covered 4. You look at any Honey-Sided Canada brochures that list cognitive things, it's longer than 4, man. Layer them one on top of another and then just magnify it by actually having Huntington's disease. And that is ever present, every moment. And on top of layering those feelings, on top of that, add you have difficulty waiting. And then I would ask, could you endure, certainly with grace, waiting for anything or everything you want? Or might it feel like this? And let me share my screen again. Or might it feel like this? That popular painting by Edvard Munch called The Scream. It feels lousy. All those challenges, the feelings they generate, all come together at the same time. So, what can we do about this? How can we help? Well, for slower thinking, I will answer the question, how can we help, by telling you a story that I've told many times before. One day in a care setting, I was talking to this guy who I'd known several years. named Tony, who was well down his HD road. He had dysarthria, his speech was a little slurred, as we say. And Tony, even though we spent several years together, we didn't know one another very well. He started asking me about my family, and then I asked him about his. Just one of those kind of conversations like, oh, are you married? How many kids you got? How old are they? Just the kind of stuff people ask each other, getting to know each other. So he drove the conversation. He started it, he kept it going. And even though the content of the conversation was warm, getting to know each other with those kind of questions, I could tell that at the same time, so even though it was warm, I could tell that sometimes I was irritating him. Some of the reason, or one of the reasons I was irritating him was easy to see. There were like 3 instances in a row where I would begin speaking at precisely the same moment he did. You call it stepping on people's words, which happens all the time, but usually one of the people will say, oh no, go ahead. And then you keep talking and it's not a big deal. But I kept doing this to Tony, and I could just sense I was irritating him to the degree where I said, Tony, I'm sorry, I keep stepping on your words, man. I'm trying. So what was going on? So we continued the conversation. And at one point I say to him, Tony, what's your daughter's name? And if I could have shut up, if I could have zipped it, here's what he would have done. Tony, what's your daughter's name? Andrea. But he had the misfortune of having HD, and the misfortune, even more so, of having me with him that night. And I know I'm not alone. I know some of you are better at it than me, but me and others, when there are silence in conversations, we just fill it with words and responses. So what Tony got with me was, Tony, what's your daughter's name? How many kids you got? How many boys? How many girls? How old is she? Do I know her? Does she visit often? And all Tony wanted to do was get to Andrea. Tony clenched his fists in the middle of the thing and said to me, don't suck my ticker. I didn't understand him because of his dysarthric speech, but somebody nearby said, I think he said, don't set my ticker back, which is what he said. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant, but subsequently, others clarified it for me. And that's what was happening. I couldn't wait, so I kept setting his ticker, if you will, back for him to respond. And that's what was irritating him. So, and I know I'm not alone, and I know it's hard. It's a hard skill to learn. I struggle with it all the time. Just because I come wired differently, those silences, I gotta fill my words. Do the words have to be relevant to what we're talking about? No, I just fill them. So what do we do about slower processing or slower thinking? Don't set the ticker back. It's really, really hard. I want to say that again for emphasis. It's really, really hard. But people do report that it's irritating, like Tony, and aggravating. For slower thinking, don't set the ticker back. For doing 2 things at once, it's obvious. Do one thing at a time. Even though we live in a multitask world, our cultures are multitask. If you don't understand that, just do without your phone, which we're multitasking all the time, no matter what we do. But single task is the word for you. Wow, what a thought that is. I know you already know this. I know I'm not telling you anything new, but what I'm telling you is it's really hard to do, but it's important. And this is the thing that's the most probably irritating to some of you, What do we do for people who can't wait? Not for character, not for personality, but for neural reasons. What do we do for people who can't wait? Well, and this is what's irritating to some. Within reason, hurry up. If they want something, they need something, and they can't wait, do the best you can within reason and get it for them. Conceptually, though, hurry up. So, all of those things, as simple as they are, I know are difficult to practice. The irony of how simple, but how difficult they are. To make the point of how difficult they are, I want to take two of the things we covered, that slower thinking and that can't wait, because they exist at the same time in people, and I want to put the two of them together. So, because people have processing delays, I want you to wait for them to answer. I want you to wait and let Tony, unlike I did, get to Andrea. So because of slower thinking and the delays and responses that come with it and processing, I want you to wait. But at the same time, because I told you they can't wait for neural reasons, what did I suggest you do as best you can reasonably? Hurry up. So he has a processing delay. I want you to wait, but he can't wait. So I want you to hurry up. So wait a minute, Jimmy. Are you telling me to hurry up and wait? Do both at the same time? That's crazy. In fact, the term hurry up and wait is used to describe the craziness of all systems. If you've been in the military, you know this. Hurry up and wait. You see Veterans Day parade yesterday. People have patches on veterans parades on their old fatigues. It'll say hurry up and wait as a kind of snarky, sarcastic memory of how absurd some of the systems in the military organizations can be. But it's like that everywhere. Hurry up and wait is just the notion of craziness. But that's how HD is designed. It's designed that way. So what does it feel like to do hurry up and wait, do both at the same time for carers? So let me share my screen again and suggest not only that, living with it for those who, but for those who try to accommodate this, forget this, I made a mistake. It might feel like that. Hurry up and wait. Now, if you have HD, we're not talking about you. We're not talking about you. Because for you, what does it feel like? Hurry up, what's taking so long? It feels like the same thing. It feels like the same thing. To do hurry up and wait, though, very seriously, to do it moment to moment, whether you're a carer or walking your HD road. Every moment, or every day, every week, years. For some generations, if you're a carer, to do this day in and day out over the days is a profound act of love. It's that hard to do. In this case, my family's not directly touched by HD. I have a little bit more credit looking at what you all do to accommodate cognitive deficits or as you walk your HD road. It is a profound act of love. It is that difficult. So, what can we do to help? Essentially, go slow, don't set the ticker back, minimize distractions. In Honeyside Canada publications, there's a lot of this stuff. Do one thing at a time. These things are obvious. I'm not here to insult your intelligence. I know that you figured this stuff out. I'm not telling you anything new. I'm here to highlight it. That until science finds a cure or an effective treatment, or whatever you want to call it, I'm sure you take any one of them. This is what we've got. These things are obvious. And as I said, there's an irony in how simple they are, but to actually practice in this high-paced world and culture that we live in, it's really difficult, but they are absolutely helpful. Sometimes I think the nature of them is too simple to think they're important, but they're important. They will change the experience of walking an HD road. So what does it feel like, again, those visceral feelings, to think with HD? Some of you know, if you have HD and you're listening to this, some of you know, it's presumptuous of me to say. So please indulge me. I hope I've gotten it right, and I hope you think I'm on the right track. Because those of us without HD, we can only speculate. Speculate based on neuropsychology, like some of those paths that I did, like the Stroop and Serial 7s. And we can speculate based on what we know as we try to simulate them in ourselves, those of us who don't have HD and don't face these cognitive challenges. We can also speculate on reports like from people like Tony in my story, or comments from people with HD when I've done this talk. And I've done this talk many, many, many times. I've done it many, many places across Canada. And people with HD, many of you have been there when they've said, yeah, exactly. Or maybe one of them will elbow their spouse next city next to them and say, now you know why it takes an hour for me to do groceries. Or now you know why it takes me an hour to rake up the leaves, whatever. So we can only speculate on what it feels like. But I think we can kind of figure out from that finding relief from these challenges, these cognitive or challenges in thinking with HD, finding relief from these moment-to-moment things, as I said, over the years, decades, is the primary challenge of living with Huntington's disease. Whether you walk your HD road or whether you love somebody and you try to accommodate these cognitive challenges. And the better we can understand these changes in thinking and how those of us unaffected, we caregivers, how we can change how we engage to accommodate these things, how you can better communicate with the person you love who's affected. It will impact their struggle to varying degrees and maybe a little, but it will have an impact. And to do it, because it's difficult, is a profound act of love. So, let me share my screen for the last time and say that this is an awareness poster from the Huntington's Disease Association of Ireland from many years ago. And there's no cure for Huntington's disease, but you can treat it with understanding. And sometimes I think, or I believe, a lot actually, that some of the understanding is to see what it might feel like. Again, not just the psychological things of fear and loss, but these cognitive feelings, that the better we can understand that, we are treating HD at home in many ways. So that's it for me. That's all, folks. Thanks for having me. I wish it wasn't virtual. I wish I could see you again. So many of you all across Canada. As you know, I've been around the provinces, and I look forward to our paths crossing again. And until then, that's a logo, Hurry Up and Wait logo, that my artist elementary school art teacher son Patrick did years ago, but you'll see the admonition to hurry up and wait as best you can in these cultures that make it so difficult is over that heart, because it's a profound act of love. And with that, back to you, Marnie.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. What a wonderful presentation. We do have a question in the chat for you about where people can purchase your book.
So I'm not a good salesman, but yeah, so there's this book. Again, this was brief. It's more laid out in this book that is self-published. Hurry Up and Wait, a cognitive care companion, Heinz in the middle and more advanced stages. And by the way, the Hunting Society of Quebec did a translation of it too, Dépêche Toi. I think it was Danielle Ravad. It was made possible by Danielle Bourret. So that's there too. You can get it at lulu.com online. That's the only place it is, lulu.com. And if you just go in and search my name and Hurry Up or Just Wait, it'll pop up. And just another thing similar is I did this children's picture book. So this is really a story you can read. It's not like, hi, I'm Freddie the Neuron explaining HD. It doesn't mention HD. It's just a couple of the principles. It's called Finding Nana's Smile. And the little girl, Kira, hugs her Nana, and it takes her Nana a little while to hug her back. And Kira thinks Nana's mad at her and goes to her grandfather, Papa, and says, hey, Papa, is Nana mad at me? She doesn't hug me back. And Papa says, are you waiting long enough? She does things late, so we have to wait. And it all ends happily ever after. But they're both on lulu.com, lulu.com. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jimmy. And there are lots of wonderful comments in the question section. We don't have much in the way of questions, but lots of comments saying what a wonderful session, and Jimmy is so wonderful, and people are really appreciative of your presentation today, and people are really happy to see you again, Jimmy. So
okay, so one final sentence, and it is this. Anything that I've shared with you was picked up by listening to families or people with HD. And if you go back to what I've said in the last bunch of time, I think that's evident. So thanks for all that I've been able to collect and accumulate. Thank you.
That's really wonderful. Thank you, Jimmy. That was such a thought-provoking way of looking at the cognitive challenges HD presents, and we truly appreciate you once again sharing your knowledge and time.